At Tad's funeral, my golden girl sister, Sophie, mocked me for losing my boyfriend until my husband walked in. Their faces went pale. The next morning, 56 missed calls from mother. She said at my father's funeral, my picture-perfect sister, Sophie, smirked at me, basking in the glow of her latest triumph, marrying the man I once called mine. But just as she opened her mouth to gloat, the air in the room shifted. My husband walked in, their faces drained of color, as if they had seen a ghost. The next morning, I woke to 56 missed calls from mother. Before I take you deeper into this tale, let me thank you for your unwavering support. If, at my father's funeral, my picture-perfect sister, Sophie, smirked at me, basking in the glow of her latest triumph, marrying the man I once called mine, but just as she opened her mouth to gloat, the air in the room shifted. My husband walked in, their faces drained of color, as if they had seen a ghost. The next morning, I woke to 56 missed calls from mother. Before I take you deeper into this tale, let me thank you for your unwavering support. If you enjoy the stories we share, please hit that subscribe button, and don't forget to drop a comment telling us which city you're watching from. We might just give you a shout out in our next video. Thanks for tuning in. Now, let's dive into today's story. Growing up, I was invisible not in the eerie, supernatural sense, but in the way that mattered most. Sophie, my younger sister, was the golden child, the sun that lit up every room, and me, I was the shadow cast in her wake, ever present, yet unnoticed. I still remember the school play when I was 10, and she was 8. She stumbled through her lines, barely remembering half of them, reciting them as if she were reading the ingredients off a cereal box. But to my parents, you enjoy the stories we share, please hit that subscribe button, and don't forget to drop a comment telling us which city you're watching from. We might just give you a shout out in our next video. Today's special shout out goes to Dion Arnold from Atlanta. Thanks for tuning in, Dion. Now, let's dive into today's story. Growing up, I was invisible not in the eerie, supernatural sense, but in the way that mattered most. Sophie, my younger sister, was the golden child, the sun that lit up every room, and me? I was the shadow cast in her wake, ever present yet unnoticed. I still remember the school play when I was 10, and she was 8. She stumbled through her lines, barely remembering half of them, reciting them as if she were reading the ingredients off a cereal box. But to my parents, she was nothing short of a Broadway sensation. They cheered, beaming with pride. Meanwhile, I sat 2 rows behind them, gripping my science fair trophy first place for a solar-powered car I had built from scratch. My hands trembled, my heart pounded. Just one glance, one nod, one well done, Elena, that was all I wanted. But it never came. Instead, Dad ruffled Sophie's hair and chuckled. "You're going to be something special, kiddo." A lump formed in my throat. I wanted to scream, "What about me?" But I swallowed it, as I always did. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, clutching my trophy like a lifeline. The house was quiet, but my thoughts roared. Why didn't they see me? Why was I never enough? Downstairs, I heard Sophie giggling, Mother's voice dripping with warmth, telling her how beautiful she had looked under the spotlight. I buried my face in my pillow, trying to block it out, but the ache remained. It always did. Years passed, and in my early 20s, I found something that finally felt like mine. James, my first real boyfriend. He had this quiet, easy laugh, the kind that settled in my chest like warmth on a cold day. When he looked at me, I felt seen, truly seen, or so I thought. James wasn't perfect. He forgot my birthday once, was terrible at answering texts, and sometimes got lost in his own world. But he saw me, or at least I thought he did. So I brought him to a family dinner, hoping, just this once, my parents would approve of something in my life. The house smelled of roasted chicken and garlic, the dining table dressed with Mother's finest plates, the ones reserved for special occasions. Sophie sat across from me, her golden hair catching the candlelight, her smile sharp as a knife. James was beside me, his knee lightly pressing against mine, grounding me in the moment. Maybe, just maybe, things would be different this time. Maybe the first wouldn't be the forgotten one. But Sophie had other plans. She leaned in, her laugh too loud, too deliberate, like she was performing for an audience. "James, you're hilarious," she gushed, locking eyes with him. I saw it, the shift, the way his cheeks colored, The way he laughed just a little too eagerly. A knot tightened in my stomach. I knew that look. I'd seen it before. Sophie flicked her hair, her voice dripping with honey, tilting her head just so. She was doing it on purpose. She always did. "Sophie, what are you doing?" I hissed, my voice low enough to avoid attracting our parents' attention. She turned back, her smile soft and casual, flipping her hair like she was in a commercial. "Relax, Elena. I'm just trying to be friendly. Don't be paranoid." "Mother," Sophie's flirting with James. "That's not okay," I said, my voice shaking. She just glanced at me before sighing, exasperated, as if I were a child whining about a broken toy. "Elena, don't make a fuss. Sophie's just having fun. You're overreacting." She turned back to the sink, washing dishes, water splashing against the china. Dad didn't even look up from his newspaper. James left me on a Tuesday, a miserable grey Tuesday, where rain drummed against the window, steady and relentless, like it was taunting me. He stood in the middle of my apartment, hands buried in his pockets, eyes darting everywhere but me. "Elena, I'm sorry." His voice was barely a whisper, the kind you use when you're too much of a coward to say what needs to be said. "It's Sophie. She's different." Exciting. A sharp, searing pain burned through my chest, but I refused to cry, not in front of him. I stared at the man who had once traced promises into my palm, who had laughed with me under streetlights, who had made me believe I was enough. "You're choosing her?" My voice cracked, barely audible. He swallowed hard and nodded, and that's when I saw it, the flicker of guilt in his eyes. But not enough. Never enough to stay. Then, just like that, he turned and walked out. The door clicked shut behind him. The rain swallowed his footsteps. I sat there, staring at the space he had just occupied, my apartment suddenly feeling too big, too empty, too quiet. The rain kept tapping against the window, tap, 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 matching the slow, painful breaking of my heart. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to make it stop, but I just sat there, hands trembling, breath shallow. And then I thought about Sophie, about her smirk, about the way she had stolen him, like he was a prize she had won just to prove she could. And I thought about Mother and Dad, about how they had let her. I drove to my parents' house that night, the rain streaking across my windshield in blurry rivers, the wipers screeching against the glass. I barely remembered the drive. I only remembered the anger in my veins, the desperate hope that this time they would care. I burst through the front door, dripping wet, my chest heaving. "James left me for Sophie," I said, my voice shaky, desperate for anyone to respond. Mother frowned, but not at Sophie, at me. "Elena, Sophie deserves to be happy." James made his choice. "You'll find someone else." That's when I knew I had to get out. The house was silent, except for the steady rhythm of rain against the roof. I felt like a thief, slipping away from a life that had never really been mine. I left a note on the kitchen table, the ink smudged where my hand had trembled. "I'm gone. Don't call." The drive to the city was a blur of headlights slicing through darkness, rain streaking down the windshield like the world was melting away behind me. My new apartment was small, the walls thin enough to hear my neighbors' arguments, the floor groaning under every step. But it was mine. I found a job at a diner, balancing plates with shaky hands, my apron forever stained with spilled coffee. The scent of grease clung to my clothes, and the customers were impatient, their tips barely enough to scrape by. But none of it mattered. I was free. I started therapy too. Clara, my therapist, had a voice like a lullaby, soft, steady, safe. For the first time in my life, I felt like I could exhale. "Elena," she said one day, her tone gentle but firm, "you're not invisible. You're just finally learning to see yourself." I wanted to believe her. At first, I didn't, but I kept coming back. We talked about Mother, about Dad, about Sophie, about the prison I had lived in for so long that I hadn't even realized the door had always been unlocked. "You're allowed to be angry," Clara told me, her gaze warm, unwavering. "You're allowed to feel." And I did. I felt everything, the rage, the grief, the loss, but also something new, something that felt a little like hope. One night, I picked up my camera again. The lens was dusty, the grip unfamiliar in my hands, but the weight of it was grounding. I stepped to my window, aimed it at the skyline, jagged and bright, the city lights blurred by the rain. Click! It felt right. I started taking more photos, the cracks in the sidewalks, stray cats, lingering in alleys, the neon flicker of the diner sign where I spent my days. Each shot felt like reclaiming a part of myself, a piece I had lost in the shadow of Sophie's spotlight. I had no idea then, but that camera would change everything. Meanwhile, Sophie was marrying James. I saw the photos online, her in white, beaming, mother and dad beside her, their eyes filled with the kind of love they had never spared for me. The church was draped in flowers, the whole scene like something out of a fairy tale. A sharp, hollow ache settled in my chest, but I didn't call. I didn't go. My thumb hovered over the screen, scrolling through the pictures, before I finally shut off my phone. I was done being their ghost. Sophie might have won this battle, but I was done letting her win me. The ache remained, it probably would for a while, but I understood something now. The rain wasn't an ending. It was just the beginning. The storm had passed, but its shadow still loomed. I had learned to breathe again, but this time it was on my own terms. The city was chaotic, horns blaring, people rushing past, but amidst the noise, I felt alive, like I was finally part of something greater than myself. I juggled night classes and long shifts at the diner, exhaustion gnawing at me, textbooks heavy in my arms. The classroom smelled of chalk and stale coffee, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Every assignment, every passing grade, was another brick in the wall I was building between me and my past. My professors were tough, but fair. One evening after class, Miss Carter pulled me aside, her gaze sharp but kind. "Elena," she said, her voice steady, "you have something special. Don't let anyone make you think otherwise." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. For the first time, I actually believed it. After graduation, I took a leap. I opened a photography studio. It was small, barely more than 4 walls with exposed brick, and a door that creaked every time someone walked in. The rent was high, but it was mine. Meanwhile, Sophie's life was everywhere, Instagram posts of her and James, her perfect little world broadcast for all to admire. Mother's voice on the phone, warm with admiration. Sophie's doing so well. She'd gush, her excitement palpable. They're thinking about buying a house. I gripped the phone, the familiar ache curling in my chest, the same story, over and over. But this time, something had shifted. For once, I didn't feel like I was drowning in her shadow. I was building my own light. I wanted to scream, "What about me?" But I didn't. Instead, I let the silence settle, then slowly hung up the phone, its weight pressing into my palm. I turned back to my camera, focusing on the world through my lens, shadows and light. Things once broken, made whole again. At dawn, I captured the quiet of the city, waking up the diner's neon sign, flickering against the pale sky, steam curling from coffee cups as the first customers arrived. Each shot was a reflection of me, another fragment I was reclaiming. Lucas noticed. "You're different when you shoot," he murmured one night, watching me edit photos, the glow of the laptop illuminating my face. "You're free," I smiled, warmth spreading through my chest. "I feel free," I admitted. And for once, I meant it. But the past wasn't done with me. It clung like a shadow, always lurking, never quite letting go. Sophie's perfect life flashed across my screen, her flawless smile, her carefully curated happiness. Mother's comments, overflowing with heart emojis and endless praise, felt like tiny needles beneath my skin, but I refused to let it win. I kept shooting, kept building, kept breathing. One night, Lucas took me to a rooftop. The city sprawled beneath us, lights blinking like stars trapped in glass. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of rain that hadn't yet fallen. He kissed me slow and certain, like he'd known forever that this moment would come. And for the first time in years, I felt it, a spark, a warmth, a future. "I love you," he said, his voice steady, unshaken. I froze, my heart hammering against my ribs. "I love you too," I whispered, and I meant that too. But fear crept in, threading itself between the syllables, fear of losing him, fear of fading into the background again. I didn't know it then, but the light was about to find me, and the shadows, they were about to grow darker. Sophie's perfect world was cracking. I told myself I didn't care, but I did. Late one night, my phone rang. Maya, my cousin. Her voice was tight, like she was holding something back. "Elena, I need to tell you something," she said, static crackling through the line. Sophie's been talking about you, saying you abandoned the family. I exhaled, leaning against the kitchen counter, the scent of coffee lingering in the air. Let her, I said, my voice even. I'm done. But Maya wasn't. She's not okay, Elena. Her marriage is falling apart. I gripped the phone tighter, my pulse quickening. James is miserable, she continued. His job's a dead end, he complains constantly. And his ambition's gone. I listened, my chest tightening. And Sophie? Maya hesitated, then sighed. She's Sophie, but worse. She's snapping at people. She's bored, restless, her charms slipping like a bad disguise. Then her voice dropped, almost hesitant. She's mean now, Elena. She yells at waiters, rolls her eyes at Mother. I said nothing, letting the words sink in. Sophie had stolen everything from me, and now she was losing it all. It's like she's angry at the world. I nodded, though Maya couldn't see me. I knew that version of Sophie, the one who had always gotten what she wanted, the one who had taken James like he was a trophy, meant for her hands alone. But now the shine had worn off, and she had no idea how to polish it back to perfection. Mother and Dad still worshipped her, of course. Maya told me about the family gatherings, how their voices carried through the room, their smiles stretched wide as they bragged. Sophie is doing so well, Mother would say, her eyes glowing. She has it all, but Maya saw through it. They're blind, she said, bitterness threading through her voice. They never saw her, and they never saw you. The words landed hard not because they hurt, but because they were true. The ache I felt wasn't for Sophie. It was for the girl I used to be, the one who had spent years clawing for their love, for their attention, for just the smallest scrap of pride. I thought about that science fair trophy-gathering dust, about all the dinners where I was invisible, about the nights I had cried myself to sleep, wondering why I was never enough. I thought about James, the way he had looked at Sophie, the way the rain had blurred my world, the night he left. And then I realized I wasn't that girl anymore. Maya and I started talking more after that. She had her own wounds, her parents pushed her relentlessly, always comparing her to Sophie, always demanding more. We, the invisible ones, she said with a short laugh, but there was no humor in it. It wasn't funny, it was tragic, but it also made me realize something. I wasn't alone. For the first time in my life, I had an ally, a real one, someone who understood, who saw me in a way my parents never had. We met for coffee in a small cafe that smelled of fresh muffins and cinnamon. She told me about her job, her dreams, her fears. I want to leave too, she admitted one day, voice barely above a whisper, but I'm scared. I reached across the table, taking her hand, squeezing it tight. You can do it, I told her. You're stronger than you think, and I meant it. Meanwhile, Sophie's world kept unraveling. Maya fed me pieces of it like breadcrumbs, each one painting a clearer picture of the cracks forming beneath the surface. James came home late more often, his tie loose, his eyes wary. He's drinking more, Maya said one evening, her voice hushed. Sophie, on the other hand, was spending like money, grew on trees, designer bags, spa days, luxurious trips they couldn't afford. I pictured it, Sophie draped in the perfect dress, her hair done just so, her smile bright enough to fool everyone. But beneath it all, the cracks, the insecurity, the slow, creeping decay. I told myself I didn't care, but I did not for her victim, for the girl I used to be, the one who had lost everything to Sophie. The difference now? I wasn't the one losing anymore. Lucas noticed, before I even said a word. You're quiet, he murmured one night, his voice soft as the TV flickered in the dark. He sat next to me on the couch, his warmth grounding me. Maya told me about Sophie, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. Her life's falling apart. He nodded, his gaze steady. And how does that make you feel? I thought about it, the weight of his question pressing down on me. Did I feel satisfied? Vindicated? Hollow? I don't know, I said finally. Angry, sad, relieved. Lucas kissed my forehead, his lips warm, reassuring. You don't have to feel anything, he murmured. You don't owe her that. And he was right. I didn't. But that didn't mean the past had loosened its grip. It clung to me, lurking just beneath the surface, her gleaming smile, her carefully curated life. Every time I saw Mother's comments bursting with heart emojis and pride, as if nothing had ever been wrong, it still stung. but I refused to let it consume me. So I kept going, kept shooting, kept building, kept breathing. Late at night, I wandered the city with my camera, capturing the way the empty streets glowed under neon lights, the way shadows stretched long in alleyways. Every photo felt like another piece of myself reclaimed. I didn't know it then, but I'd need that strength soon because my father was about to die and everything was about to change. The news hit like a blow I hadn't seen coming. Maya called late one evening, her voice shaky, the static on the line making it sound even more unreal. "Elena," she said, her words cutting through the silence like glass. "Uncle Robert's gone." I gripped the phone tighter. "What?" "Heart attack. The funeral's next week." I sat there, staring at my camera resting on the coffee table, my hands trembling. The air in the room thickened, pressing down on me, trapping me in a space that felt suddenly too small. I felt the weight of it, grief, guilt, something else I couldn't name. I hadn't seen Dad in years, had barely spoken to him beyond those cold, obligatory phone calls filled with silence, stretched too thin. And now, he was gone. Lucas watched me carefully, waiting. "Should I go?" I finally asked, my voice raw, my chest tight. He reached for my hand, his fingers firm, his eyes steady. "Not for them," he said, "for you, for closure." I swallowed hard, nodding, my throat burning. I wasn't sure if I was ready, but I knew I had to go. I didn't want to see them, but I had to say goodbye to Dad, to the girl I used to be. The drive to the funeral felt endless, the highway stretching ahead like a path I wasn't sure I wanted to take. The sky hung low, heavy with grey clouds. Lucas drove, his hand steady on the wheel, the soft murmur of the radio filling the silence. I stared out the window, watching the trees blur past, my thoughts unraveling faster than the road beneath us. What would Mother say? What would Sophie do? I thought about all the dinners where I had been invisible, the trophies that had never mattered, the nights I had cried myself to sleep, wondering why I was never enough. I thought about James, about the rain, about the note I had left behind. And then I thought about Dad, the man who had never truly seen me, who had never cared enough to try. The ache was still there, but alongside it, something else had settled strength. I wasn't that girl anymore. I was enough. The funeral was suffocating, the air thick with incense and the overwhelming scent of lilies. Mother sat in the front row, her face drawn tight, her eyes swollen. "Lucas," I called, my voice clear, carrying through the murmuring crowd, "come sit by me." Silence fell. James's face went pale. The room shifted, whispers spreading like wildfire, the weight of realization settling in. Lucas stood, his suit crisp, his presence undeniable as he strode toward me. He extended a hand to James, his grip firm, his voice low but sharp. "Thanks for leaving, Elena," he said smoothly. "You let go of the best woman in the world for this." Sophie's smirk vanished, her lips parted, but no words came. Her perfect composure cracked, her eyes wide with something dangerously close to fear. Mother's fingers tightened around her purse, her face pale as she finally looked at me. I met her gaze, my voice quiet but razor sharp. "Guess she never told you. You always said Sophie deserved happiness." My voice was steady, but my chest was tight. "I hope you're satisfied." The room fell into a suffocating silence, the weight of my words pressing against every wall, filling every corner. I felt it, the power, the strength, the release. For years, I had swallowed my pain, buried my voice beneath their expectations. But not anymore. This time they heard me. Lucas's fingers intertwined with mine, his grip warm, grounding. "Let's go," he murmured, his voice a quiet promise. We turned and walked away, the door clicking shut behind us, sealing them in that silence. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I had said my goodbyes to Dad, to the girl I used to be, to the prison I had finally escaped. The drive home stretched out before us, the highway endless beneath a heavy night sky. Lucas kept his hand steady on the wheel, the soft hum of the radio, a quiet undercurrent. I stared out the window, the blurred trees rushing past, my thoughts racing faster than the road beneath us. I thought about Mother, about Sophie, about the funeral that had felt more like a reckoning. I thought about the girl I had once been, the one who had begged for their love, their attention, their approval. And then I thought about the woman I had become, a woman who had built something real, a life, a career, a family. The ache was still there, but it no longer defined me. Because I was stronger now. I was enough. And deep down, I knew the storm had passed. Mother called the next day, and the day after that. "Elena, please," she pleaded, her voice trembling through the speaker, thick with something I had never heard before: regret. "I was wrong. I'm sorry. Please forgive me." The phone felt heavy in my hand, the weight of years pressing against my ribs. I wanted to feel something: anger, sorrow, even satisfaction, but all I felt was exhaustion. I had carried them for too long. I exhaled, my voice calm, cutting. "Ask your golden girl," I said, my tone as sharp as a blade. "She's the only one you ever cared about." And then I hung up. The phone buzzed again, ringing over and over, a sharp, relentless sound, but I didn't answer. I couldn't. Maya called that evening, her voice careful, her words slow. "Elena, it's bad." The line crackled, and just like that, I knew the fallout had finally begun. Sophie and James were unraveling. James, humiliated by Lucas's words, had grown bitter. He was drinking more, coming home late, snapping at anyone who dared speak to him. I could picture him slouched in his expensive suit, his tie perpetually loose, his eyes heavy with exhaustion. The fire that once fueled him had burned out, leaving nothing but smoldering resentment. "And Sophie?" I asked, my voice low. Maya exhaled sharply. "She's desperate," she said, "spending money they don't have, designer bags, luxury spas, extravagant trips, trying to keep up the illusion of perfection. But it's all crumbling beneath her." I listened, my chest tightening, my mind racing. I didn't want to care, but I did not for her, for me, for the girl I had been, the one who had lost everything to Sophie. Maya kept talking. "Mother's alone now. Her golden child is too busy drowning in her own mess to care." I could hear the quiet satisfaction in her voice, but it wasn't gloating, it was recognition. Mother was finally seeing the cracks, seeing the damage, but it was too late. I could imagine her in that empty house, surrounded by silence that once belonged to me, the same silence I had lived in for years. I thought about the family dinners where I had been invisible, the science fair trophy that had never mattered, the nights I had cried myself to sleep, wondering why it was never enough. I thought about James, about the rain, about the note I had left behind when I walked away. And I understood something I hadn't before. I owed them nothing. Not Sophie, not Mother, not any of them. I owed myself everything. Lucas noticed my silence that night. "You're quiet," he said, sitting beside me on the couch, the dim glow of the TV flickering across his face. "What's wrong?" I sighed, leaning into him, his warmth wrapping around me like a shield. "Maya told me about Sophie," I murmured. "Her life's falling apart, and Mother's begging for forgiveness." He nodded, his expression unreadable. "And how do you feel?" The question hung between us, heavy and unspoken for far too long. I hesitated, searching for the answer, buried beneath years of anger and loss. I don't know," I admitted, my voice soft, angry, sad, relieved. Lucas pressed a kiss to my forehead, gentle but firm. "You don't have to feel anything," he murmured. "You don't owe them that." And for the first time in my life, I believed it. He was right. I didn't go back. Instead, I published my photography book that year. I called it Unseen, a dedication to those who had once been invisible, but had never truly disappeared. The launch was intimate, just me, Lucas, a handful of friends. Her golden glow had dulled, her cracks exposed for all to see. The storm had passed. I had survived. I had thrived. I glanced at Lucas, at Maya, at the life I had built from the wreckage, and I knew, deep in my bones, I had always been enough. Years later, a letter arrived. The envelope was creased, the handwriting delicate and uneven. I sat at the kitchen table, light pooling around me, silence stretching thin. "Elena," it read, my name sharp as glass. "I was wrong. I chose Sophie, and I lost you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me." I read it once, my throat burning, my chest tightening. I read it again, the words blurred, my fingers trembled. I searched for something: guilt, sorrow, longing, but all I felt was exhaustion. I had carried their weight for too long. I set the letter down, the paper cold beneath my fingertips. I didn't cry. I didn't call. Because forgiveness doesn't always mean fixing what's broken. Sometimes it means letting go. And I did. That night, my latest exhibition opened. I stood by the gallery wall, surrounded by my work shadows and light, fractures made whole. The air hummed with conversation, the scent of wine and perfume drifting through the room. Lucas stood beside me, his hand warm in mine, his smile steady. Maya laughed with a client, her voice rich, her eyes bright. My family, the ones who had truly seen me. I paused in front of a photograph, an image of myself as a child, a quiet girl, hopeful yet hesitant, tucked into the shadows, her wide eyes searching, her smile uncertain. I studied her, remembering what it felt like to be small, to be overlooked, and then I smiled. "You're not invisible anymore," I whispered, warmth spreading through my chest. I thought about the road I had traveled, the pain, the struggle, the resilience. I remembered the science fair, James, the rain. I thought of Sophie, of Mother, of the cage I had once been trapped in. I recalled the diner, the camera in my hands, the day I met Lucas, the foundation we built, the kids we lifted up, the lives we had changed. And it hit me. I had stepped out of Sophie's shadow, out of Mother's grasp. I had found my light, and this time, it was mine. The room was still, the air thick with something unspoken, and I felt it: power, strength, freedom. I turned to Lucas, to Maya, to the life I had created from the ashes of the past, and I knew without a doubt I had always been enough. The storm had passed, and I had come out stronger. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, give it a thumbs up. It helps others find it too. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell for more stories like this. And drop a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts.